morning, Alan.
Good evening, Leanne.
We did that really well.
Yes, we did. I think it's
getting better
smooth.
at this.
Very smooth.
Now you look very summery there. I was just out taking my dogs for a walk before this live stream because they would not settle down without that. It's 6 degrees here, and I did the conversion, so that's 42 Fahrenheit.
We are at 87 Fahrenheit.
So okay,
which
87.
is what, like 5 Celsius? I don't know, but we're at 87 Fahrenheit.
No, it's obviously higher. But my question is, why didn't America adopt the metric system?
Because we're too damn stubborn. Why should we? I mean, look. Everybody's walking around and wearing American clothing, watching American shows. Why should we give in? I mean, I'm surprised that that we don't just insist everybody speak English, or we won't speak to them at all. We're very stubborn. Yeah,
that's true. And look, before we hit record, we were just sort of riffing. It's been a big week for Americans. Lots been going on. Any thoughts from you? And then we can move on and actually talk about today's topic.
Well, I'll tell you this. 50 years from now, they'll be looking back at this time in American history, maybe world history, as hard to figure out and hard to decipher. And it's rather unprecedented, no pun intended, for a president to leave office the way he has. However, you have to wonder how he's been governing over the past year and how he'll govern for the next 5 months before he leaves office. A lot was hidden from the American people, which is terrible. In any case, the American system was designed by geniuses to be run by idiots. And we have survived through bad decisions and bad wars and stupid things. We've also done great things, defended democracy and shed blood. The founding fathers were brilliant, and it's what's kept us here for 250 years or whatever. So, I've lived through Vietnam. I've lived through the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm living through the stuff today. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to die in bed.
Okay. I guess, is that a message of hope? But look, I really like that. Today, we're going to talk about today's topic very soon. And if you're here, let us know in the comments where you're from, where you're joining us from, if you have any questions. Today's topic is moving from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset. But before we kick that off, I really like that phrase. And it kind of, you said it was designed by geniuses to be run by idiots.
Yeah.
Do you think that's why a lot of global corporations have policies?
Well, a lot of global corporations have stupid policies. I mean, I'm not going to. I'm not going to assign genius to almost any corporation. I mean, I guess if I thought hard, there might be a couple, but I mean, I wouldn't assign it to Amazon or Apple. Federal Express may become close with Fred Smith. Dyson, I'm very impressed with. If you think about it, I mean, the people who started the Pony Express in the United States, going from Missouri to the West Coast with these series of riders, was pretty brilliant until they came along with the telegraph. And that was pretty good until they came along with the telephone, So the thing is, genius has a shelf life, except in the American Constitution, Charles Darwin, Isaac Newton. There are some people like that. But corporate life has been, GE was a heroic company. Now it's terrible.
Yeah.
Toys R Us, now terrible. I'm sure there are Australian companies this way. So I think we somebody said to me once at a workshop, he says to me, listen, you're regarded as a thought leader in consulting. I said, yeah. He said, why don't you call yourself a genius? And I said, because genius has to be bestowed by others. No one's a self-appointed genius, at least not unless you're completely arrogant and smug. So I think that we toss these things like hero and genius and so on around much too readily.
Yeah. And maybe it isn't the word genius, but maybe even if you flipped it, designed by idiots to be run by geniuses, like a lot of the time, these procedures, like they nut out the innovation, you hire talented people and they just create conformity. Anyway, that's an interesting topic. Let's talk about what we're on about today. And if you're here, great to have you here. We've got Dee Dee that's in the house. She said, I just bought a first-class ticket to Alan's program in Florida. It makes me want to work harder. That is a really great,
my child, yes.
great demonstration of an abundance mindset, Dee Dee. And it's official, Alan, you are a genius.
And Dee Dee, you look terrific in this picture, may I say. And that's completely objective.
I agree. DD, you look amazing. I mean, and in person as well. We met in Vegas. Now, Alan, what is a poverty mindset? Let's talk about definitions first. It's always good to get some common definitions of what we're talking about. What is a poverty mindset? What is an abundance mindset?
Well, a poverty mindset, and sometimes called a scarcity mindset, is when you refuse to share, invest, because you're afraid of losing what you have. And now this is very common when you're on the brink of starvation. I mean, when I was fired in 1985, I was doing $20 resume reviews for people. I would do anything to put bread on the table. We didn't have much money. But when I could afford it, I began flying first class and, wearing good clothing. And so we've been through this on other episodes. And so, and I began to pick up checks. And one of the things in my community is when I've been with clients, friends, colleagues, I always try to pick up the check. Sometimes other people beat me to it and so forth, but I always try. And so as you progress from survival from survive to what I call alive, arrive, and then thrive, right, which are my watertight doors as you succeed in life, you should have more and more of an abundance mindset. And that means no matter what you give away, you can make more of it, gather more of it. And I'm not just talking money, I'm talking time, because I believe discretionary time is wealth. I'm talking coaching, I'm talking supporting people, I'm talking empathy, talking listening. That's an abundance mindset. So we've all seen the obvious. Somebody puts a check on the table and people look at it like it's a scorpion. I'm not touching that. But there's also people, somebody comes up to them and says, boy, I really enjoyed this. Could you just tell me how I could? And they say, no, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. So you'll find that people with abundance mindsets are much more confident and they're much more generous and they're much more pleasant to be with.
I agree. It's kind of awkward when you're out at the restaurant and there's someone that's there that's like sort of penny pinching and counting and taking out their calculator to do the math. And I find it really awkward that I'll just want to pay for them because I just find it super awkward to have to go through that.
I love it. There was a song in a play on Broadway called the Ladies Who Lunch. And don't hate me, this is not a gender issue, but you'll see people at lunch and there'll be 7 of them. And they'll start calculating what each of them had to eat and drink. Yeah. And then they don't want to leave a tip, a 20% tip, including the tax. They want to subtract the tax out before they leave the tip. And then sometimes they just ask for separate checks. And for goodness sakes, I know people here who would drive 7 miles to a gas station that was 5 cents cheaper per gallon.
Yeah.
Never mind the gas they lost driving, 14 miles.
And the time taken as well to do that. And I think what you said before, I think it really has to do with the trust that you have in yourself. So I think that I was, especially when you start a new business, I think this plays out in many different ways. Like, are you a person, if you're not available, to refer someone on and do that generously? And I've done that the whole time. But I think sometimes when it came to meeting with a potential client or a prospect, I was so nervous because I had to get the deal, right? I needed some lifeblood. But that's the worst place to be in because you can't be creative. You can't be in the moment.
As you became more successful.
Yes.
Did you find yourself more comfortable making impulse purchases or were you still leery about making them?
Definitely more comfortable. But I think the biggest impulse purchase was just flying to Vegas for your session. I think I made that decision like within 5 days, but it was me like, oh, maybe that would be kind of cool. But I've got to credit my husband because he has the biggest abundance mindset in the world. Like when we go to Asia, he'll negotiate up. He'll pay them more. Like he'll just tip everyone. And so he said to me, just go to Vegas. Like, what do you think? What are you worried about? And I think because it's trust though. He has faith that I can earn it back. I'll get some ROI on it. And I think sometimes if you don't have that for yourself, it's really great to be around people that see that in you. And I think that's what's really helps me.
Well, yeah. And it's interesting how many couples don't have the same mindset. My wife and I both grew up poor, and my wife has retained a certain amount of poverty mentality. And so we were in Firenze, right, in Italy, and we stayed at the Four Seasons, which is the old Medici Palace. It's 17 acres of grass, incredible. So, I had arranged for a nice suite. So I did my usual thing. Maybe your husband does this too. I sat at the front desk You have anything nicer than this? She says, I'll get the manager. So the manager comes and he's going like this, So my wife is pulling my sleeve saying, the suite you got is fine. I said, you haven't even seen it. Manager says, we have a couple of things. I said, well, why don't we look? It can't hurt. So he takes us finally to the Noble Suite. And the Noble Suite is where the royalty stayed. It's got frescoes and bas relief and stuff on the ceiling. And I said, I like this. He says, well, why don't we talk an arrangement here? So my wife says, just a minute. And he says, anything wrong? She says, no, I do love the suite, but I'm going to go in the other room because I don't want to hear what this costs. And she goes to the other room. And so, we're married 56 years, so we've made adjustments,
Yeah, that's great. I think it's good to have that yin and the yang as well. Now, before we move into obstacles, I mean, you talk about sometimes you can be earning all the money or being quite successful, but you still retain that poverty mindset. Yeah. I'm curious. I remember watching a documentary on Warren Buffett. I don't know if you've seen it, where he's driving and he goes to McDonald's every morning.
Yeah.
And he usually orders a bacon McMuffin, but if his day trade has gone really well the day before, he'll get cheese on it.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. What the heck?
He drives an old car.
Is that like, it's not really holding him back though? Like, is it more about, rather than the mindset, it's more about him just being very astute with money?
There's something called a hair shirt. A lot of the popes would wear it. And the idea was self atonement. And so you'd wear it because it felt terrible, where people self-flagellate and so forth. And I think that was Buffett's way of sort of atoning for his great success. He drives an old car. He does things like that. And I've known a lot of people who could fly first class or get a new car and enjoy life more. But no. When I worked in Princeton for this guy who was as near to a genius as I've ever stood and who helped me tremendously in my career, he had this damn Buick convertible. That's all he drove, Buick convertible. And so nobody wanted to get a really more expensive car than the Buick convertible. But I came back from the West Coast where I was headed to the San Francisco office. I had a Mercedes. And I parked the Mercedes next to his Buick in the lot. He says, what is that? So he talks, well, 3 weeks later, he had a BMW convertible. So, sometimes people can be drawn out of that scarcity mentality because they start asking themselves, what am I saving? How much more of my life do I have left?
Yeah. And I think it's the value of having people that are external to you as well. Because I guess when we're around people that see us, it's incremental growth. But then you haven't seen this guy in ages and you start questioning that. Cool. And so you had a Mercedes and now you've got Bentleys, Rolls, Ferrari.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got a BMW convertible. I don't know what my end game is. This is exciting.
Well, listen, I have 3 convertibles. It's 87 degrees. My kind of weather here. But you said something very important a few seconds ago, and that is when you move from a scarcity to an abundance mentality, a lot depends on with whom you are hanging. In other words, you need to change your friends. You don't have to abandon everyone. But as you become more sophisticated, more successful, you learn more, you have more of an intent. You need friends who support that and from whom you can learn as well. And so that will help you move to more of an abundance mentality because they have an abundance mentality.
Yeah. And I think actually being in your growth cycle as well, being around people that are playing at a different level and you're seeing what they're charging for proposals and the type of people they're working with and the type of clients just broadens your perspective too. And you think, oh, wow, they're just like, they're normal people. I can do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And how they're spending their time. People with a scarcity mentality get really uptight when they're not working. Yes. My God, it's Wednesday. It's 2:00. I should be working.
Yeah. Interesting. Can you share a bit more on that? Because there's always something to do, but I know you spend your afternoon by the pool and.
Yeah. Playing with the dog. Right. Well, yeah. People think they have somebody who's keeping track of them, somebody on their shoulder, somebody up in the sky with a green, visor and sleeve protectors. And they're keeping some ledger about how they're spending their time. And the fact is we have more control of our lives than we think. And what matters is what we create, not what we do. And so I can create great results for someone. In a few minutes, I did a session this morning, a Zoom session this morning for people, 90 minutes. All right. And that, next thing I did this with you, but this is not work. I mean, I don't know what you think it is, but I don't. So
no, this is fun. I would pay to have this time with you. I love it.
So you can't have self-imposed guilt and create that kind of stress. And you can't go through life thinking somebody's checking on you. You've heard me say this. People leave corporations, they go out on their own, and now they have a worse boss.
Yeah, that's true. Now, if you are joining us live, let us know in the comments if you have any questions or any responses to what we're sharing today. Before we talk about obstacles, which I'd love, what are the obstacles? I remember a quote that you said about, and this relates to an abundance mindset, where you said, don't you find it interesting that the people with the weakest brands are the most protective of their ideas? And do you think that links into this whole premise of scarcity v abundance?
Yeah. I mean, look, and I'm not alone in this. I write books, I do podcasts, I do videos, I do everything. We're doing this, and all my IP is out there. And so if you want to know my intellectual property, it's easy to access. You have to hire me or anything. And I do that because nobody ever learned to ski by reading a book. And so you're not going to get everything out of it unless you work with me if you want to advance your career. But other people feel that what this intellectual property, irrespective of results, just what they've kept, those are like jewels in the safe or something, and you can't share these things. And if so, I had a woman in my community from Australia who told me that I had to throw somebody else out of the community because her company was called Exponential Growth, and his company, half a world away, was called Growing Exponentially. And she said, that's duplication. I said, what are you talking about? I can't do that. But that's absolute paranoia.
Yeah. And I think I'm probably maybe too far. I haven't trademarked anything yet, and I know I need to. I'm talking to a trademark lawyer. But for me, it's like, there's an idea. I'll get a new one tomorrow. I again, trust in myself too. So let's get back to this topic, obstacles. What do you think are some obstacles when people are trying to move? Like, they are successful, but internally they're still sort of caught in their old habits. You spoke about,
they don't make a distinction among security, a good life, and a contributing life. And so a lot of them feel to be secure, they need more and more and more. There's never enough. I ran an exercise once with a group, and I said, I'm giving you $600,000. What are you going to do with it? So somebody says, I'll pay off my mortgage, I'll pay off my car debts, I'll put some away and so forth. Somebody else says, I want to give to philanthropy. One woman says, I'm not touching a penny, it's going in the bank. And that's how a lot of people feel. There's never enough security. Then there's living the good life. And you need to be able to have the confidence to lead a life that for you and your family is rewarding. But it needn't be someone else's life, So I could buy another house. I could have a boat. Everybody says, why don't you have a boat? I could have a private plane. I don't need it. It wouldn't help my life, even though I could afford it. And then finally, how much do you want to contribute? My wife and I are very philanthropic. And when I say that, it's not just we give money. My son said an interesting thing. He said, anyone can write a check. He said, and you write checks. However, he said, you and mom attend the theater at the college level, at the high school level, at the amateur level, as well as Broadway. He said, so you support the arts. And, I was very happy that he felt that way. And so if you want to be philanthropic, if you want to sponsor people, whatever you want to do, that's a contributing life. So I think the obstacle is that people don't differentiate those three things.
Yeah, you're right. And security, that's the reason I sort of act out of that fear, is if I lose, like, the loss aversion, I think, is really powerful as well. The fact that it's more painful to lose something than it is to gain something. And that's sort of what makes our decisions too. Again, it goes back to, do you trust that you can make it back, and be able to continue adding more value? All right. So if anyone is here tuning in, let us know in the comments what you think. Alan, what are some practical steps that you recommend to anyone that wants to start cultivating an abundance mindset, or just being more abundant? Does it start with mindset? Does it start with behavior?
Well, I mean, what we think informs our behavior. Our beliefs are manifest in our behavior. So it's what you believe, basically. And parenthetically, you want to change a corporate culture, you change what people believe in. Now, you don't smack their behaviors. Behaviors manifest what they believe in. So I would say that if you want to start cultivating more of an abundance mentality, you need to start believing that you're not going to run out of money tomorrow. You have to start believing that debt is okay if you can pay it back short term. You have to start believing that it's not all about money. And I would start with small steps. I would start volunteering for an hour a week to help kids at the library, or to help with rugby practice or football practice, or some kind of athletic practice for kids. I think you have to overcome where you came from and look at where you're going. And too many of us are rooted in how we had to scramble to survive, or things our parents told us and so forth. Okay, that's psychology, but now we're adults. We need to look forward and say, here's what I can become, or here's what I am becoming. So you start with small steps, and you have to understand that abundance is not necessarily about money. It's about your time, your intent, and your support, things like that.
I remember those are really practical steps, and even just starting with an hour a week, right? Things can really change as a result of that generosity. Tim Ferriss is a podcaster and author, and he was talking about what goes on in his mind when he's thinking about security. If he can't make it, this guy's a multimillionaire. And he goes, the worst case scenario is I'm living by the river, I'm eating noodles every day, that type of thing. And he actually did that. So he actually, for 4 weeks, he just ate noodles. He lived with nothing. And after that, he's like, you know what? It wasn't even that bad. So I find that really quite interesting. But Douglas, got Squirrel here. It's great to see you here, Squirrel. Squirrel asks, why would you trademark if your value is unique to you and widely distributed? So why would you put the IP around?
Because trademarking your intellectual property creates equity in your company. And consequently, your company is more valuable. And it's more valuable in two respects. Obviously, if you wanted to sell it, I have 22 trademarks hanging in my closet because I think I've told you my wife will let me put them anywhere else. But if I decided to sell some in consulting, which isn't going to happen, those are pretty important. Trademarks can be renewed and so forth. But the second thing is, in terms of equity, that a lot of prospects, potential buyers, will look at trademarks that you own and give you much more credit for originality and innovation, trend setting, being a thought leader, and so forth. So those are the reasons. It's not so much to protect yourself, because ironically, the stronger your brand, the more people know where things originate. So somebody could go out, there's a guy in Germany right now who wrote $1 Million Consulting on his own, self-published it, no one's going to confuse him and me.
Yeah. It's funny though, how every quote nowadays is attributed to either Mark Twain or Abraham Lincoln. Like every quote now. And I need to get into trademarking, so it's a good prompt, Squirrel. My basic trademarking is if I come up with a cool phrase, I just buy the .com domain name immediately and just take it, so no one else can buy the .com. So I've got my best real estate is just domain names. I've got 20 of them. Alan, it's been so good. Thanks so much again for talking the walk on today's show.
It's always good to be with you, Leanne.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I know you've got a growth cycle call to head to as well. So I'll give you a final toast, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to the next one.
Yay.
Okay.
Cheers.
Take care.